everybody, to episode 2 of Is a Debate Podcast. I'm your host, Paige. Who do we have on?
Hi, guys. It's Alana.
Hey, everybody. It's Alex.
Hey, Christy here.
Lindsay.
Anna.
Hey, everybody. It's Tiani.
So today's topic, we will be talking about, should drugs be decriminalized? But first, we're going to have our hot topic. What I want is everyone to unmute their mic, and we're going to do the Maxwell challenge. And then I will vote on who sounds the best.
Wow.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I love it, babe.
Who's going first?
I love it, babe.
And I just want to say that I have hated every bit of this Maxwell challenge. It's my favorite song, and I don't want to hear y'all's interpretation of it. No.
I will graciously take last place.
Some people, though, I'm like, why would you post that?
Why? Why? That is not the note. That's not the note.
Horrific. Okay, this week's hot topic. When should
I
you...
was just playing it to get
I was working on it.
You think
literally just played it so I could get the melodies right.
Oh, well, go
Find
ahead.
the note, y'all.
Go ahead.
Nope, I was ready to whoop y'all asses, but I guess we just gonna skip to something else. Okay.
In a real spicy already.
So this week's hot topic is, when is it appropriate to move out of your parents' house?
Well,
To clarify, as an adult.
Well, my daddy said I can come home anytime. So, baby, as long as they cooking.
when I was coming out of high school, my mother told me and my sister that we either were to get a job or go to college. But either way, you had 6 months to figure it out and not be in her household. And we always had a running joke that adults didn't need to live with each other. And that was the thing, like after a certain age, especially after you got out of college and you was like used to doing what you want to do, you can't come live in my house because 2 adults can't be in here and this is my house. But it's funny you say that, Alana, because I could very well go home right now and we would not have any issues. Like, I'm 30, we're good. So as far as when you should leave, I don't know. If you have the freedom to not have to leave like I did, I'd say until you got on your feet, but I don't really know. I don't know that at 18, I wanted to stay in my mama's house. I was ready to go.
I think we look past the financial benefits of being able to stay home and save up. The people who do stay home and save up and actually manage their finances well, they can actually go directly into a house as opposed to going to apartment living. So I do know a few people, you know, across different races who stayed with their parents but it was manageable. I know personally, my mama told me I could stay there forever. It was pure sarcasm because she knew I was leaving. As soon as I got that Howard acceptance letter, baby, I was gone. In my spirit, I lived and voted in DC. Okay, I didn't even know them people no more. But, you know, like they said, I could go back home, but had I stayed at my mom's house, I would have given them a little bit of rent, saved up a down payment for a house, and then went directly into a house, which a lot of people do, and it saves money.
I'm gonna just piggyback on the financially sound. So once we're financially sound and able to move out, I think personally, I have this, like, it could be a hindrance, could be seen as a hindrance of mine, but this overwhelming feeling of wanting to be independent. So, like, it was never verbally said. Maybe just, it was never verbally said or hinted at. It's just like, it was still go to school, get job or get work after, and then that's it. Like, we didn't really talk about the after. I just had this overwhelming feeling of wanting to, like, once I left, that I didn't come back. However, I am back home now in between. So, like, as everybody knows, cost of living is getting way too high. So we did come back to my parents just to work on a more permanent and cost affordable living situation.
Mm-hmm. I have moved in and out of my parents' house a couple times. Okay. I obviously moved out for college. After college, I came back home and was working full time, but still living at home. And then I started renting a townhouse, but then I had this bright idea that I wanted to go back to grad school. And in doing so, I got a scholarship, thank you, God. But part of the scholarship was I had to be a full-time student and full-time researcher. So I had to quit my job. And so I had the flexibility to move back home yet again until I finished grad school. And then when I moved out, I was getting married and making babies and shit. So not in that order and not intentional on all accounts. But I will say that I appreciated the fact that my parents had the means to allow me to come back home and didn't like charge me rent or make me pay anything, because I know there are situations where it's like, yeah, you can come back home, but you pay XYZ as well. And so I just always appreciated the fact that they still kept an open door to me, even though I may not have necessarily wanted to move home. But I don't think there is an age limit on when you just need to get out of the house. However, that's situational.
Now, let me ask a question to the people. Now, I think as mature 30-year-olds, some of us, we can appreciate I said some of us, Paige, we can appreciate the practicalities and the responsibility of the choice to live back at home. But in 20s, we might not have had the clarity. So my question to you, as mostly people who lived on their own in their 20s, if you would have met someone who like if you were in your own apartment and you met a guy who lived at home, would you have had the same mature response? Would you have been like, why is he living at home? Like what would you have thought at that time?
No, I would not have had the same mature response. I have grown.
I think I would have wanted to understand, like, what is the plan? Are you just at home because it's easier and you don't have to cook and you don't have to clean? Or are you at home because you're back in grad school? Or are you saving up to buy your own home? If it's the first one, bye.
And what about now, Paige? What if somebody was living at home now? Same question, same
question, but I think I would be more frustrated. I wouldn't have the patience for you to reach whatever goal that you're getting towards.
It would obviously be situational, like at this age, how long have you been at home? What is your plan to get out? Why are you at home? I think it's a level of like, how comfortable have you gotten being there? Like if you're at home and you've been there for 6 months because, the economy sucks, COVID and all these things, and you're just trying to get your, life back on track, then I can respect that. But if you've been at home for 3 years and you just comfortable and you don't see a reason to move out, then we got a problem.
Well, what about like other cultures? Like a lot of other cultures, you don't leave home until you get married. So what if that person literally was just like, yeah, my finances are fine, but like I'm not leaving till I get married? Because why would I live on my own? Just live on my own.
I think in that sense, that kind of cultural lifestyle, maybe not the right word, comes with other cultural things that probably are foreign to me as well. So I think as a whole, I have to be able to accept your culture, because it's not just that you live at home. I'm sure there are other things that are not the same as my culture that I'm used to. So do I want to deal with that or not?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
still situational. Like, so I still get living at home until you get married is still like a plan. So like if we're talking and discussing it, it's like, yeah, I'm staying at home until I get married. But the second part of that is I need to see mannerisms. Like if I come and visit your house with your parents and stuff, like, are you just kind of chilling, not really helping out around the house and stuff like that, and letting your parents or mother or whomever kind of do everything for you? Because that'll give me a sense of how you're going to be in our home. Like, are you going to expect me to do everything now?
Right.
So,
Your mom's still washing your clothes. What? Like, nah.
Do you know how to set up the utility bill when we move in?
I mean,
Can you order some Cox cable?
Will we have electricity on the first day of movement? That's the fact.
You gotta
are
turn
you
it
even
on.
just willing to, mannerisms? Are you willing to do stuff for yourself? Is it literally just the fact that in my culture I stay home until I get married? Or are you, as Alex said, getting comfortable? You know what I mean?
So then you're saying there is something wrong with comfortability living at home when your parents are like, yeah, sure, like stay
For
home.
me, it's if you're getting comfortable, and it's like, if I like to see a lack of motivation for, because that can carry over into like your work and like your goals. If you're getting comfortable at home with what you're doing, like, are you going to go and pursue other goals that you might have, or are you just going to kind of like sit in it? So that's why I think it's all just situational. Like I just have to see like how you tackle, how you handle certain situations that come up in a household.
Now, we did see something very profound in the sense that a lot of cultures, it's very normal to live with your parents until it's time to get married. It almost kind of feels like Black people are the only group of people that are pressed to put people out. Like, we're like, even move out, because my parents didn't necessarily put me out, but I was like, so
I'm out. Yeah.
I'm out, baby. So why is it that even when moving to your own space, it's like sometimes Black people are even reluctant to have roommates? Because I know a lot of my white coworkers are like, if they're not married, they have a roommate.
Mhm.
And that's very financially smart. But then when I meet Black people of the same age, we're like, oh no, we needed this 2 bedrooms to ourselves, fully furnished. And it's like, why are we like this? Why are we like this?
I have thoughts. I have thoughts. So, and this is just like dealing with the children that I deal with. You want things you never had. And one of those things you maybe never had was space, privacy. If you grew up and you were one of 4 and it was time for you to leave, you were actually ready to leave 9 times out of 10. And your parents were ready to leave because, again, no offense to any race, but it was probably a money issue. You were like what they say, severe independence is a traumatic response. Yes, it's a traumatic response to poverty. You've been in a position where you couldn't do for yourself. You had to depend on somebody else and they didn't come through. So now you want to make sure that you take care of you at any and all times and you don't have to depend on anyone for anything. That's why a lot of Black women get up and go. Thank you, no thank you, this was great, let me go to college, let me make sure I'm okay so that I'm financially okay, so I don't have to call whomever for whatever. Also, because, and this is not even here nor there, but I want to start a program for any kid leaving high school to have dorm life, because a lot of these kids don't know how to live independently because they never had that situation. So you don't know how to pay bills. You don't know how to make groceries for the week or 2 weeks and make that actually last. Like, it's a skill that's necessary, but it's a skill that we want because of the upbringing that we had, if that makes sense. Nobody had a house that they were running from, but if you could have a space of your own, after living in a house with 2 siblings, 3 siblings, 1 sibling, or even just by yourself with your 2 parents and the dog, like, yeah, I would pretty much like my own space.
So I want to respond to that, Tiani, with 2 thoughts. Which the person that Paige described, she is me, honey. I was in New Jersey and all of my coworkers had like 3 roommates. It would be like 4 people in an apartment, and both of the apartments I had in New Jersey were 2-bedroom apartments by myself. I thought about getting a roommate, and this wasn't from coming from a place of lack of. So it's like, I get what you're saying, Tiani, but it's like, I ended up being that person, and I didn't come from, I grew up with what I needed, nothing more, nothing less, but I had exactly what I needed, right? But I think that, number one, even if you grew up with what you needed, sometimes that survival and status mentality can be passed down, even if you are not coming from that struggle. So it's like, my mom, I feel like, broke through the struggle to like give us a sufficient lifestyle. And I'm not saying sufficient to knock my mom. What I'm saying is like, sufficient is a privilege. So many people live life without having their basic needs met. And it's like, I never needed anything. Never thought about like, how are we going to eat or anything. Like, my mom always made that possible, although we didn't live a wealthy lifestyle. So that wasn't my concern. But it was just like, I think like her mentality kind of passed down to me of like having to kind of prove myself. But the second piece I want to say about that is, I think that a lot of brown cultures, and having been exposed to John's family, who's Asian, don't like outsiders in your home. And so it's just like, for me, if you were going to meet my roommate as an adult, it's like, I wasn't going to go on Craigslist and find a roommate, which is what a lot of my white counterparts did. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like, it was more difficult for me to reconcile. So it's like, for me to be in a roommate situation, it would have like had to be someone who I knew through work or knew personally or knew through someone else. And I didn't know anybody in New Jersey. So I simply just wasn't going to have a roommate. And that was it for me. Like, if one of y'all were in New Jersey, we could be roommates. If you had a friend in New Jersey and you introduced me, we could be roommates. But like, I wasn't going to go there and be roommates with a stranger. And I think part of that's cultural.
And hey, I'm Lindsay again. I haven't talked this whole episode yet, but I also I think a lot of brown people move out of their house as well, because once you have kind of got a taste of being independent, whether you choose to go to college or you move out, once I come back in, I have to follow your rules. And if I cannot do that without being disrespectful, then I know it's time for me to go. So I came back home after college. I moved out of my parents' house at 24. That was once I had a job, I knew I could depend on with benefits, a full-time position. And I also felt like, damn, I'm 24. She keep asking me to wash these damn dishes. Now I can't cuss her out, but I ain't even eat. These ain't even my dishes. I know. So that I don't lose my relationship with my parents, because I'm an adult as well. And yes, you should be entitled to say what you got to say. But for most Black and brown folks, if you under my house, you must follow my rules. That's it. And they didn't ask me for anything, but I knew once I couldn't really voice how I feel, it was time for me to go.
That's real.
Dude, I still tell my mom what time I'm gonna walk through the door out of courtesy. Like, I just doesn't feel right in my soul, no matter how old I am. If I'm staying at your house, to just stay out at indefinite times, like, you just can't be walking through people's house like that. So I do feel you on that with the cultural thing, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I definitely got chewed up for I went to go visit my parents, and we went to Philly to have dinner with Paige, and Rose was with us. Paige, I got in trouble that night. So Rose was with us, and it was late. Rose was like goofy at the table, like not acting up, but he was clearly tired. He fell asleep before we even got him back to the car. And my mom was like, where the hell are you with my child? And clearly not talking about Rose, because we were out so late. So like, yeah, I'm a grown ass woman married with a child, and she's still like, hello,
Bring my child home.
Do you see what time it is, type of thing. So yeah, I get that. I get that.
Sorry, Mrs. Wallace.
Yeah.
All right, so it is time to get into this argument. Once again, the topic is, should drugs be decriminalized? We will have Tina versus Tiani. And of course, I forgot to look up who is who. So we're gonna start with, yes, drugs should in fact be decriminalized, with Tina.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you coming here today to learn why drugs should be decriminalized. Many of you may know by now that 1 in 5 people on this planet are in prison in the United States.
Damn.
1 in 5 in the planet is imprisoned in the United States. Google it if you don't believe me.
How many are
Okay. And 65%, and I got this from a government website, 65% of the United States prison population has either been incarcerated for drug-related charges or has a substance abuse disorder. Okay? One study found that 15% of all former prisoner deaths were related to opioids. Okay? And so it's just like, prison isn't the solution, people. It's the problem. Okay? Let's go back to addiction and why people might be in prison. Okay? Now, when we say drugs shouldn't be decriminalized, I'm assuming that means the use of drugs shouldn't be criminalized, not the drug dealers themselves. So let's just be clear about that. And addiction is a chronic disease of the brain that can affect anyone, and it leads to an uncontrollable habit. And when we think about prison and rehabilitation, they are not equipped to rehabilitate those persons with this disorder. Treatment not only has to occur in the prison, people who apply for treatment usually don't get it in the prison. Even if you had a small drug problem going into prison, you're more likely to have a bigger drug problem coming out of prison. And then on top of that, even if you get treatment in prison, you really need a exiting program to help you transition into the real world and not still have your addictive behavior. So it's like prison itself is not reforming drug disorders. And in fact, it can be triggering, it can be heightening. So resources would be better spent, taking people out of the prison. Again, 65% of that population is in there for opioid related reasons. That money would be better spent coming up with rehabilitation programs than just throwing them in prison, where you can continue to do drugs and come out and still have your disorder. So it's just like, when we think about, why are we paying for this? Why are we putting people and locking them up in environments where drug behavior is more conducive? It might be even easier to do it than it is on the street. It's just like, who is this actually benefiting? And then I can see on the counter side to that some people who have drug disorders can have dangerous behaviors that can make us who don't have drug disorders at risk. Some of that criminal behavior could be violent. Some of it, is why they need to go to prison. And it's like, okay, but if that person is a violent offender, then they can go to prison for that. But if it's just on the basis of, consuming drugs, then prison isn't going to help me and my family be safer, because that person's going to come out having done their time and not have been rehabilitated. Therefore, I submit to you, church, let's decriminalize these drugs. That's it.
Thank you, Pastor. So moving on to Tiani. With drugs should not be decriminalized.
First, Tina, thank you for that amazing opening. Let me go ahead on and state that this isn't about addiction at all. This is actually about drug decriminalization. And drug decriminalization only eliminates the penalty of selling drugs, but like, at what risk? So let's say I no longer arrest people who sell drugs. How do you think that affects the demand and supply? I'll answer. So I can't use Oregon because Oregon is too fresh and too new. Oregon legalized all drugs, which, I mean, the best of luck to them in that, in 2021. But Portugal actually legalized all drugs in 2001, sorry. 2001. And so they have a they have a way more research to back up why they may have to reverse their thing. So what they found is that more young people are actually using drugs, particularly those in between 15 to 34, particularly cocaine, ecstasy, and LSD. Not the regular weed. I know what you're thinking. Regular weed. No, ma'am, Pam. Cocaine, ecstasy, and LSD. Like, come on. Why would anybody of those ages need those drugs? But that's neither here nor there. You mentioned something about treatment infrastructures. Let's say we decriminalize drugs. Now you just have addicts doing what? Wandering the streets. You have no treatment infrastructures for these people. They are just out here. Like, decriminalizing drugs is going to have a negative effect um on the drug supply on the street, and that just cannot be positive. Like, yes, you do need to now go through different methods to get it, and you have taken a slight burden off of the system, because don't get it twisted, if the cops want you in jail, you're going. They'll find a way. All right, it don't have to be drugs. They can literally say you just resisted arrest and congratulations, you won the ticket to 3 hots in a cot. Like that, it is what it is. But decriminalization only helps criminals. It only helps the penalty of selling drugs. I think we should go about this in a different way, where we pick which drugs are necessary. You do not need magic mushrooms. You just don't. And honestly, I don't know what you're gonna do with meth either. Like, you're just gonna lose your teeth. Some drugs that you just don't need. I'm sorry. I am firmly against the decriminalization of drugs. Anna?
May I, Paige?
Take it away. Take it away.
Okay, so let me address some of the things you said here. You said it would alleviate a slight burden, I think were your exact words there. And I'm going to repeat a statistic here that said 65% of United States prison population is there for opioids or a substance abuse disorder. And so the word slight burden just isn't in alignment for me. And again, that's 65% on top of the 1 in 5. Okay, so that's not really giving me slight, but I hear what you're saying about the drug dealers. But this is the thing. In my argument, I also said that those resources simply need to be reallocated. If 65% of the prison population was no longer there, you do not need to spend all that money on prisons. Some of that surely can be reallocated to appropriate treatment systems. If the answer is simply to not have the drugs, because in this argument, we can either have criminalization or not have criminalization. If the answer is to keep criminalization, then we're going to keep perpetuating this mass incarceration that really affects brown people. We haven't even gotten into the racial disparity of these laws, okay? The fact that a lot of these laws are written to mass incarcerate Black and brown people. We all know the disparities in the laws between cocaine and crack, right? And so it's just like, these things are systematic, they're in place, they're not helping society, they're not helping the people who are affected. It's not rehabilitative for anyone. So it's just like, the real question is, why? What are we gaining? What are we actually as a society gaining from keeping mass incarceration perpetuated via these drug charges? Period. End. Okay.
Gianni, your rebuttal.
Your 65% is drug-related cases, and drug-related cases go beyond distribution. That's that. So, like, do you have a specific number? Yeah, that's addiction. Again, you not penalizing people has no effect on addiction. Addicts will be addicts. You're giving them more access because you're taking the penalty away from people who are selling it to them. Like you argued against yourself. Also, the drug trafficking will increase, the number of new users will increase, and my personal favorite, drug tourism. So now you have people who used to come here for regular stuff, or at least used to go to Mexico for cocaine. Now they're coming to the United States for all of these different drugs. Because Oregon saw a uptick in drug tourism. I mean, like, which led to human trafficking. There has to be a penalty for being a scourge on the nation, and I get it. Some of these laws are definitely 100% geared toward Black and brown, because the slight chemical difference between crack and cocaine is absolutely insane. All right. But like I said, the cops, if they want to get you, they will figure out a way. They're not the brightest apples in the bunch, but if they want you to come with them, you're going. All right. Like, I don't think decriminalization as like a big broad brush is the answer to this problem. Like you said, I think we need to build current treatment facilities and infrastructures and honestly a whole slew of other programs. Like, yes, maybe we need to go back and figure out a way to put the dare dog back in school, because you'd be shocked how many teenagers are on more drugs than people with jobs. All right, like, decriminalization is an idea, but it's too broad of a stroke to just be implemented the way that you are suggesting.
Tina brought out the notebook, so she has something else to say.
To address this Oregon issue, okay, Oregon Trail. I bet my bottom dollar that no one flew from Europe to Oregon to do some drugs. And that was probably people in the US of A. And so if it was decriminalized, I get your point, but I don't think that we would become an international destination for drugs, because there are other places in the world that have more lax drug laws than this, and who don't criminalize drugs the way we do. And maybe they are destinations, but it's like Amsterdam. Have y'all been to Amsterdam to do some drugs?
I mean, maybe.
Okay, incriminating question, but you get my point. Like, you could, but y'all don't do drugs, so you're not just going to travel there just to do it. So it's
technically, weed is illegal in Amsterdam, just to put that out there, and alcohol. Okay. Go ahead.
And alcohol, thank you, Alana. Okay, so this is my other point. There are countries with lower age limits for drinking, and their tourism is not boosted. So it's just like this idea that we're going to become a crack cocaine heaven for the rest of the globe. It's just like, I'm not buying it. So yeah, I think that's my closing argument. My whole point is, I just don't see how it's helping our society to, again, perpetuate mass incarceration via these drug laws.
And in rebuttal, I don't know one person who went to Amsterdam for the food, to be quite honest. They didn't go for the architecture, my friend. They went for what you think they went for. All right.
It could have been sex, though. It could have been sex.
No judges, no judges, no judges. Okay, no judges. I don't judge. But taking the penalty away is not what you want to do. And that's the end of it. Like, the penalty, I get what you're trying to do and alleviate. Like, mass incarceration is a whole nother dead horse that should be beat. But taking the penalty away is not going to get to the answers that you're trying to get to.
All right, ladies, so we have Tina saying the money that is used in the prison system to incarcerate these people should be allocated to the right programs to help them out of addiction. We have Tiani saying that lock everybody up, basically.
Is that what she said?
Not really.
What a misquote.
Not really.
That is not what she said.
Not really.
You trying to sway the audience again?
I'm sorry. Alex, cut that out. That was so bad. That was so bad as a moderator.
Let the record stand.
As hell. Absolutely God.
Let the
But on
record
mute,
show.
but on mute if we're cutting. On mute, all I said was lock their ass up. So the fact that you said that it was on point.
The record shall stand.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so we're going in the order of my screen. Lindsay.
Me?
Yes.
Either way, all I gotta say is, oh wait, what am I supposed to do? Just say one thing.
Oh.
Shit. For entertainment purposes, I'm gonna have to go with Tina.
Not for entertainment.
Okay. Alex.
No, I really hate this part of the show.
Cut her camera.
I'm gonna go with Tina.
You said Tina?
Tina.
Okay.
Beans.
Christy.
I was like, is she frozen?
Oh, I'm here.
Station later. I was going for Tina.
I'm the only one who's voting for Tiani.
Oh, I can't even get up.
No, can I go back? Can I go back? I really need to go back because this is not for entertainment purposes. This is
But you made a vote.
It doesn't
However,
matter.
I voted for Tiani's argument.
it was
Not
Tiana's
that it
argument.
matters, clearly, but I voted.
Paige announced the winner.
Today's winner is Teens Beans.
And now it's my time to claim there were two because Lindsay clearly laughed at Tina, so that won. Honestly, clearly I'm right because when Michael Jackson died, who'd they go get? His fucking doctor. When the guy in New York, who was Omar, when he died, who'd they go get? His drug dealer. Y'all don't give a shit about them people. Y'all just want the drug dealers to lock them all up. Leave it in there. Lock them all up. There you go.
Wait, why when I just said that you said that, it was a misquote?
Because I give up.
She didn't say it initially. You know what I mean? Not at
I didn't
first.
say that initially. But when people die, you say, oh my God, who sold it? Even Mac Miller, who sold him those drugs? Who took them drugs? This is not about addicts. This is about drug dealers.
That's a fact.
Like, stop it. It's foolishness. All of these people die. You go, oh my God, who sold them the drugs? Let's go put them in jail. No, I didn't shoot you up. What is Lindsay doing?
It was the voice change.
It was. I actually was trying not to laugh. The voice change too.
I do that a lot. Sorry.
Okay. Well, since Tiani has given her sentences on my materials, I will, as always, these arguments are designed to be polarizing, and the truth is always somewhere in the middle. And my personal opinion is that drug dealers should continue to be criminalized, but drug takers should not be criminalized. Because again, it goes back to like, what is the point of making it a crime? If you're a dealer, the point of making it a crime is because you should not be ruining your community and you need to go away for that. If you're consuming drugs, it's like you need a rehabilitation program. And that's just my opinion.
But
go ahead, Lindsay.
No, go ahead.
But for me, the addict, because they're addicted, and yes, I love that somebody, whoever in the argument said that it is a disease, or I forgot what the terminology was, but you did.
It was a chronic disease of the brain.
Yeah, it's an illness. But at what point, because it doesn't take one time to rehabilitate an addict. It doesn't take two times. It could be their whole life you trying to rehabilitate one person. So at what point do you set money aside, or are you really going to be invested in making them better? So it's just a lot put into supporting an addict, and who is going to set aside the time to do that? Because it could be they had a good 2-3 years, right? and boom, something happens again. So how do you help that? And it's not one or two people. It's so many addicts, whether it's alcohol or drugs.
Well, what I took from Tina's argument was the whole allocation of funds. Like, education and rehabilitation prison systems are where it seems like you take money from first when you're talking about reallocating towards, I don't know, building or something like that. But like,
Or
better rehabilitation centers just to begin with.
And that's, I mean, I agree with that solution, but it's an expensive thing to fix, right? It's not something that, we don't have homeless shelters for the homeless people who are here. So why would they put enough money into rehabilitating drug addicts? Like, I just don't see it, because we can't even help the people that are on the street without anything going on.
But a lot of the people on the street have substance abuse disorders. That's why they're
And
on the
mental
street.
health,
And mental health.
health.
But also, I would just say that I get what you're saying, which is just setting up rehabilitation centers doesn't necessarily solve the problem. But I would also argue that sending people to prison is even less helpful. So it's like you can send someone to rehabilitation center. It may work, it may not work. But if you send somebody to prison because they have a drug issue and they don't get any help, it's guaranteed to not work.
I am going to tell you the same thing I tell my students, and it is rude and it is raw. Prison was not for prisoners. Prison is for the rest of society. I did not build the prison to save you. I built the prison to get you away from everybody else. All right. Like, I didn't care about you. That's why you make 10 cents a day. Like, that was never in my heart. It was never on my mind. Also, with addiction and homelessness, and to play Republican for a second, there's nothing wrong with Republicans. But at what point does personal responsibility come in? Like Lindsay said, how many times can I help you? And that's anybody and anything. Like, how many times can I help you defeat a problem that you have created for yourself? Not very few people are born with drugs in their system. So very few people are born drug addicts. So you went out and found this problem. You may have been fine before, because a lot of people who have the opioid problems actually were in severe pain before. And so that's how they got into the opioids. So nonetheless, you did not have this problem. You went out and found this problem, and now it has become everybody's problem. Now it's the government's problem. Like, at what point do we have a personal responsibility for you and your life? Like, how many chances do I give you? It could be.
But are we not taking inherent personal responsibility for someone when you lock them up? Because think about it this way. If I take you for 3 years and I put you in a prison, I'm responsible. Like, that person has to be taken care of for 3 years. And so it's like, regardless of where they are, it's like the US has already made a decision to act on that person's addiction. And so it's just like, how do you want to act? Right? Like, in what circumstances should that person be held for 3 years? Because you're like, you need to take personal responsibility. Okay, and it shouldn't be the government, but it's like, but the government is taking responsibility of that person when they incarcerate them. And the other thing I would say is, like, back to this mass incarceration thing, I don't know the statistics on, like, per capita, how many people in the US have substance abuse issues versus other countries, but it would be interesting to see what that is versus our prison rates. Like, do we have a drug issue right today that's accounting for 40% of our prison issue? Or is this really just a prison issue? Because it's like, let's say that, I'm just making shit up. Let's say that the UK has the same population and the same amount of drug addicts, and yet we have 20 and 30 more times the prisoners. Then what do you say then?
No. So prison is good money, big money, great money. I said it season 1 or 2, and y'all told me not to say it, but given some money, I would definitely own a prison. I would it's easy money. Like, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's darn profitable. But like you said, like, once I take you and I take the rest, the country has, to answer your question, the country has a prison problem. They have a prison problem, and judges have gone to jail for it. Cops have gone to jail for it. They just sent 3 judges to jail for putting kids in jail for putting kids in jail for no reason, right? Like, it's a prison problem. I do not believe it's a drug issue. Howsoever, just letting these people run free is just not it.
I got something. I remember what I was gonna ask. Do these same countries who decriminalize drugs and are able to provide support for their people also have free healthcare, also have free different, different things they have in place to support somebody who is going through addiction? And I feel like a lot of times that's the difference between us and other countries. In other countries, it seems like they provide more support to people, even though I was talking to somebody at my job who's about to go on maternity leave. Like, even though most teachers are supposed to get 6 weeks at least, you still have to do FMLA because the district does not, like the state of Georgia, I don't think does not honor maternity leave.
Doesn't.
And so, like, even just to hear that, it's like, well, shit, it's up to my job to give me maternity leave, or I got to do all this extra paperwork, instead of just everybody who becomes a mother should have this available time to take out for their child.
Because what the hell is it to return back to work after 6 weeks of giving birth to a child?
Y'all see this is off subject, getting off subject, but the comparison, like, it's, if it goes in favor with the state, and if a doctor claims it so, like, for what the doctor says, after 6 weeks, given like you had no complications, it's a regular birth, you should be back to normal, I guess. So like 6 weeks is what's stated in law, but for most companies. But anyway.
But just providing
support. Question, Lindsay, Portugal specifically does have universal health care. Everything is free to children below 18 and people over 65. Everything is mostly free for the people in between.
But to y'all's point, like, sorry.
I was just saying, I think that plays a major part in what we value versus what we know we are so throw them out there. Like, even from, it's just a bigger thing, I think, than just decriminalizing something. Do we have things in place to support if we did something like that? I think that's the bigger question.
I think too, we're talking about like once somebody is already an addict, but to those points, like, how do people get to that place? Some people, it is by choice, like Tiani was saying. It may seek it out, or it may seek it out, like the feeling, get addicted to it. But then sometimes, just like crime, it's a where you are in your life, like what's happening in your life, what's provided to you, like are you not able to make it by, like, are you not able to find work, like what happened to get you to that point of addiction? And then two, like, once you are addicted, there aren't many, at least from what I hear from people on social work, like, it's a pain to get resources to that person, and like valuable resources, in order to get them to make a change. So one example I did, I don't know if y'all saw the Joker movie, but that's kind of what I think of when it comes to this type of, like, now his was more mental issue, but under the same guise of like social work. So the state or wherever was cutting resources and he wasn't able to get his medicine. And so not having his medicine, not having the resource, the state resource to talk to and check in with, sent him down in a deep spiral. So, and that's, to me, like, you know, a number of people's story. Like they need the resources, they're not available with the state, and then you end up in this situation. So then should they be penalized, like thrown in prison? Because in prison, you're definitely not getting the help. Or do we need better allocated rehabilitation resources where they go, or facilities where they go instead of just sentencing someone and sending them to a prison where they're definitely not going to get the help that they need?
In prison, though, isn't that the best opportunity that you will get for help in if you don't have certain health benefits?
I
Because
think it depends.
I'm sorry.
I think it depends because even here, I don't know about different states, but like they're under resourced as well. So they don't really have the personnel to cater to everyone's needs. So I don't think, it depends on where you are, but at least from what I've seen, like they don't even have enough resources. They're struggling to have people just to stand guard for prisoners, let alone be able to provide like the program for you to like help in your mental or drug addiction problems.
Yeah, and I obviously don't know how the prison system works, but when I was doing my research, it made it seem like rehab wasn't just a free for all, like sign your name up and you get into rehab in prison. It seemed like you had to qualify or apply, and not everybody gets in. And I think the main critique of the prison rehabilitation is that it doesn't extend beyond prison. And so it's like, it's one thing to go in with an issue. And I think this goes back to like broader prison issues, but it's like if someone does a 5-year bid, they come out and it's like a lot of people struggle to re-enter society without a drug issue. And then it's like, if you're going back around your old friends, your old community, blah, 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 and that program doesn't get extended to the outside, it's like, that's like, I think Lindsay said it, that like rehabilitation is a lifelong thing. And so getting a 6-month program in prison isn't necessarily helpful for everyone. And also like just the exposure to drugs in prison. A lot of people pick up addictions in prison. You know, a lot of people went in for weed and leave doing heroin. So it's just like, it's not a helpful place for drug addicts based on what I saw online.
Also, we went to one extreme. We went to the addiction extreme. But what about the person who's just walking down the street with like a little over an ounce? Not addicted or anything, just weed is illegal. You got a little over the legal limit and you get thrown in prison.
To me, that goes back to the mass incarceration thing, because this is like when you get into like a car issue, right? And it's like, depending on that police officer, they can write you 20 citations or they could write you 1 citation for the same accident, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of discretion on how these drug laws get implemented. And just to take it back, I know that when I was watching Love and Hip Hop, there was one guy who went to prison for 5 years for selling weed. And it happened to be around the same time that white kid had raped that girl. And like they said, they didn't want to ruin his life and he gets off. And so it's just like, so you're telling me because this man was holding some weed, he needs to serve 5 years of his time, but you could rape someone, you can murder. Like, look, these days you could murder somebody and do less time than weed. Okay, so like this still goes back to like, to me, a lot of the drug rules are just a tool for perpetuating mass incarceration.
Well, the last thing that I want to ask everyone's opinion on is the idea that the decriminalization of drugs kind of takes away the allure of drugs. And so I cannot remember, I almost want to say it was Canada that did this. I could be very wrong, but they legalized a bunch of stuff and they saw a huge drop in usage just because it's like, it's not cool to not break the law anymore. Tiana, you had something to say?
So that would work well for my students. So, and I'm just going to go off of kids because that's who I work with. They sell drugs because it's cool. It's very few of them that sell drugs because it is the family business and they absolutely need to do it. Most of them sell drugs because it's cool. And the only reason why people still go to drug dealers as opposed to like dispensary is because apparently they are taxing the bejesus out of that weed at the dispensary. But otherwise, if you were to nationally legalize weed, I do think you will have a lot less child drug dealers because nobody's going to a kid anymore. When I can go to Walgreens, CVS, the gas station or whatever, pick out my weed. No, it's not laced with embalming fluid or anything like that. And then, you know, like I would be for that simple reason. A lot of the kids think it's cool to sell drugs. And the only pushback that I got from that is that's just gonna make them sell harder drugs. You know what I'm saying? So like they'll move on from selling weed to selling something much harder, like maybe meth or the little cigarettes that they dip in embalming fluid and smoke. They would move on to a different drug to sell, you know? So like the real issue is like how to get them to stop selling anything. I still don't think decriminalization is it. So.
Okay. Well, ladies, this has been another wonderful and thoughtful discussion about drugs in the USA. So thank you to our listeners for another episode of
The volume cut out, but yes.
Yeah, I'm about to say your volume
definitely cut out.
I felt the Wheel of Fortune enthusiasm, and I